God wants you. Just come back.
And there's actually a place like close to the North Pole, there's a building where seed is being stored right now. Tell a little bit about that. You talk about that in one of your books.
Yeah, that's the seed vault in the Arctic, Svalbard, is where that is. And basically for years, these think tanks and scientists, these elites, have literally stored the original copies of all the seeds of the plants on the planet.
Workers in gene banks, farmers have struggled to produce all these seeds and sent them here because they feel safe.
And why wouldn't they feel safe? I mean, look at this totally secure fence, gate. It'd be really tough to climb over. Makes you wonder kind of why it's even there. Almost looks like a Hollywood stage. So the first video that I'm going to show you here is by a news company called News Punch. So let's look up on Wikipedia, who is News Punch? News Punch is a Los Angeles-based fake news website, originally named Your News Wire. It was founded in 2014 by Sean Tabatabi, however you say it, and his husband, Sinclair Treadwell, in November 2018. It rebranded itself as News Punch. Your News Wire was revived as a separate website in November 2020 and has continued publishing hoaxes similar to those in News Punch. And that's how they do it, to make people who know the truth look like idiots.
The government is planning a supernatural event of its own. According to reputable sources, the government are going to face alien invasion in the year 2024 in order to usher in a one-world government. Here's where it gets really interesting. In his 1994 book, Project Bluebeam, investigative journalist Serge Monost writes that the United Nations, NASA, and other government agencies have been working in secret since 1983 on a top-secret operation called Project Bluebeam. The purpose? To pave the way for a global government by fooling people into thinking it's the end of the world. Here's how it works according to Mr. Monost. First, the global elite will fake an alien invasion, convincing the world that aliens are planning to take over major cities across the globe. Second, religious populations will be treated to a rapture or fulfillment of their religion's prophecies. This will all be fake, conducted through the use of large-scale holograms and microchips hidden within most modern electronics.
In 2024, a global event will alter the course of mankind's future. The world will stand witness to a massive alien invasion. Thousands of projected holographic alien warships will blanket the skies, sending people into a global panic. Real military crafts within the holograms will inflict actual damage to the surrounding areas to sell the gimmick.
Once the various nations of the world topple under the massive civil unrest and panic, the New World Order will assert itself, and the people of the world, desperate for any sort of authority, will accept its rule. The notorious globalist Henry Kissinger let the cat out of the bag about the plan in the late 70s. Kissinger, who is Klaus Schwab's mentor, explained in clear terms how the globalists will convince Americans to accept the New World Order. He wrote, "Today Americans will be outraged if UN troops entered Los Angeles to restore order. Tomorrow they will be grateful. This is especially true if they were told that there was an outside threat from beyond, whether real or promulgated, that threatened our very existence. It is then that all the peoples of the world will pledge with world leaders to deliver them from this evil. The one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, individual rights will be willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being granted to them by their world government." Kissinger wasn't the only insider in the late 70s speaking about how the elite will attempt to hijack humanity and brute force the world government upon them. Wernher von Braun, the German and US aerospace engineer who worked on Operation Paperclip, confessed on his deathbed in 1977 that the global elites were planning to use terrorists and pandemics as false flags to manipulate and control the masses. Even more interestingly, von Braun said that the final false flag will be a fake alien invasion. The global elites engineered a crisis with the COVID pandemic to erode the sovereignty of nations and terrify the masses into compliance, and they half succeeded. But as anyone who's been paying attention to the disturbing rhetoric coming out of Davos recently will know, the global elite are not done with us yet. It appears that COVID was the dress rehearsal and they have an even greater con up their sleeves. So what should we be doing to stay alert and ensure they don't get away with the plan? Mr. Monost provided details about exactly how the global elite will perpetrate the con. He stated that NASA will use low-frequency electromagnetic waves to communicate telepathically and that the New World Order will phase out cash. At the time, skeptics had several issues with this conspiracy theory. First and foremost, the technology required to inundate the world with realistic visions of aliens and messiahs simply didn't exist in the early 1990s. But fast forward to our present age, and all of the futuristic tech that Mr. Monas spoke about has been rolled out by the elite in recent years. There is no doubt that the global elite have the technology to pull off the con. We do know that the US government briefly entertained the idea of using a hologram during the Iraq War. US Air Force planners brainstorming on the best way to achieve a bloodless coup in Iraq proposed creating a giant hologram that would appear to be Allah commanding Iraqis to overthrow Saddam Hussein. This plan was never implemented, but the fact it was even considered at such a high level proves that the technology exists. Microchips, holograms, electromagnetic waves for telepathic communication. It's uncanny how everything Monas wrote about in 1994 has been rolled out by the World Economic Forum in the last couple of years. Skeptics at the time also questioned whether governments across the world could really cooperate and coordinate closely enough to pull off this mass con. But again, everything Monas wrote about in his book has come to pass. The World Economic Forum has penetrated governments all over the world, placing its own people in the highest offices in the land, in Canada, New Zealand, France and Brazil, to name just a few countries.
That we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young noble leaders of the World Economic Forum.
In 2023, there is no question that governments across the world could coordinate closely enough to pull off a mass con. We've already seen it happen with the COVID pandemic. The global elite had governments and mainstream media singing from the same hymn sheet. Mr. Monast was said to be writing a new book with bombshell further information regarding government plans for Project Bluebeam. However, he was found dead in 1996. The official cause of death was listed as a heart attack.
We all know what conspiracy theories are. Crazy things that people say that turn out to be true 6 months later. Project Bluebeam, not to be confused with Project Blue Book. Project Bluebeam was a conspiracy theory by a Canadian who said that there were coming events where the NASA and as well as the world organizations, the UN, were seeking to create a new world order in preparation for the Antichrist to rule. That in order to do that, they were going to simulate the second coming. And he said the way that they're going to simulate the second coming is that they are going to create, this is just a crazy conspiracy theory that was made, that they would create fabricated natural disasters that would unearth, or wars that would unearth evidence that the Bible isn't exactly right, that we have gotten it wrong all these years, and what it actually means is this. And that then they would use technology in space and all kinds of stuff to project something similar so that people would see Muhammad and Jesus and Buddha all coming together in one, and that we're supposed to come together under one world rule, one world religion, and one world order. And everybody thought the man is insane until the Canadian government went to his home, arrested him, took his children away from him. Just for proclaiming this theory, they took his children away from him. They arrested him. They couldn't keep him in jail because he hadn't broken any laws. They put him back out on the street, and 24 hours later, he has a heart attack. Making everyone say who thought he was insane, wait a second. Will the powers that be seek to leverage what we are seeing for their own power? That needs to be the primary concern as we walk through this. That needs to be what we're concerned about, because they have discovered that if they can create an emergency and then provide the cure, and they can receive the trillions upon trillions of dollars in order to line their own pockets and coffers. So the real concern doesn't need to be aliens, it needs to be Washington. But more on that later. Here's another fascinating scripture I want you to write down, 2 John chapter 1 and verse number 7. 2 John chapter 1 and verse 7. For many deceivers are entered into the world who confess not that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh. This is a deceiver and an... Now, one thing I never really paid attention to until I was reading that this week, here's what jumped off the page at me. For many deceivers are entered into the... Where did they come from? Not from this world. How many of you know you can't enter into the world unless you're outside of the world? So many deceivers are coming from another world. Does this mean extraterrestrial? There's no evidence of that. Or is there evidence throughout history of malignant beings who seek to possess, who seek to control, who seek to deceive, and who seek to kill, steal, and destroy? So what are we talking about then? What are these beings? This goes back to Genesis chapter 3, verses 14 through 15.
It's interesting. Jeremy, I want to talk to you for a second. The Pentagon's UFO chief, this is a Pentagon guy, a UFO chief, the chairman of Harvard's astronomy department as well, both releasing a report on Tuesday where they wrote an artificial interstellar object could potentially be a parent craft that releases many small probes during its close passage to Earth. You've got the Pentagon talking about the idea of a mothership going above us and sending probes down.
An alien invasion in New York City. We can report that. The mysterious blue illumination scared many people, lighting up social media.
It's not supposed to look like that in the night sky.
The New York City skyline was mysteriously illuminated last night.
Look, it's flashing. It's the sky.
Looks like the end of the world or something.
With a glowing shade of blue.
What is that? There's got to be a reason why the powers that be in Washington, D.C. thing to say we need to actually say the words out loud, and we need to get language in right now to get this taken care of. And I'm concerned, Ross, that at the end of the day, the only thing that would make a politician do that and act in that sort of enhanced way where they're in a hurry is that there's some bad news involved. I don't know exactly what it is, and I know that you don't know exactly what it is. People are talking. It's hard to sort out what the sources mean or don't mean. But, you know, as I said, Chuck Schumer was and has been a cautious man in many cases. And I don't think he'd be talking like this, pushing this, if he didn't think there was a fire behind his back.
If they fake an alien invasion, they get the New World Order, which they want. They thought COVID lockdowns were bad. We found out that they pretty much lied to us about everything to push an agenda of more total control. We're closer than we've ever been to World War III, all of this other stuff. And now the only way for them to truly, in my mind, get what they want or supersede the timeline, speed up the timeline, is to fake an alien invasion. The moment they do that, everybody panics. The government has to step in as a one world government. All governments come together to fight an outer worldly threat. And then we're all in lockdown like you wouldn't believe, because we got to be aware of the alien viruses. I mean, we're already scared of the human viruses. Now we got to be scared of the alien viruses, and we're So that's, I think, the end game. And it's pretty easy to see that that's what they're gearing up for. That's why they're telling us there's a mothership in our... No, shut the Like, we've had this technology for years.
They've taken our focus and put it up there and not to the outer lands or the extraterrestrial areas.
When someone says extraterrestrial, what does that mean? It means extra terrain. So it's a lot more prevalent that the world is bigger than we know, in my opinion, than these beings are traveling millions of miles or light years away to come here. I believe they won't let us go past Antarctica. So if they won't let us go past Antarctica, my favorite show in the world is Attack on Titan. I believe they're telling us things through shows, that being one of them, that there is potential for other land outside of what we know. If there's more land out there, then why are we paying $1,500 a month to live? Or California, people are paying $3,000 to $4,000 a month in rent to live. Why would we have to do that if all of our world could fit into Texas and then there was more land other places? Like, obviously it makes more sense.
Now, as weird as that is, the other thing that's going on, this was completed by Russia in 2018. Russia completed the biggest thing that they've ever done on this scale, and they created like the seed vault, but they've done the DNA of every living thing. In 28, they call, and you know what they call it? The Noah's Ark. of all living things. They're using even the biblical terms. It's like, what do you know that we don't know?
And why would they do that?
Well, I think part of it is when you take a look at what they're up to, the transhumanists, they are literally not coming, it's already being done, most people have no clue about it, on a global basis. They are altering every plant, every animal, even insects, and including people. They're altering everything. All of God's creation is being reconstructed to their image. And then think about Satan, right? That's what he's all about right. Twisting, contorting, perverting God's truth.
Always tainting God's image and those things that God created.
Yeah.
And that the genetically modified food that you eat now and the wheat that has been destroyed because we've used so many hybrids of it to mess it up from what it was and what God meant it to be. That's why you have all the gluten sensitivity, the allergies. All of that is because we have done exactly what he said not to do to the food.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at Leviticus 19, it's a very clear command from God. How do you get around that? And he clearly says, don't mix different kinds of animals and don't mix different kinds of seeds. Even back then, God is saying, don't do this. And what are we doing today? We're messing with God's creation. Leave it alone. He knows what he's doing. But no, as mankind, and certainly I believe inspired by Satan, you just got to rebel against God, and it's messing things up. And a lot of these changes, people don't realize, it's irreversible.
This is it. This is the vault. This is what is built for humanity to survive. This is the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. It's here since 2008, built by the government of Norway. And it's one of the most amazing things you're going to see in your life. This is becoming the permafrost here in granite. They built this like they built the tunnels in the Alps with a big machine, big excavator. Took about 2 years to build, and it's built to last for a very long time. This is meant to be your way out if the power fails, if there is no lights, so you find your way out of the vault. So the seed deposit works like with any bank and a safe deposit storage in the basement of the bank. You bring your own seeds. You, as a depositing institution, you own them and you keep them, and only you can determine what happens with them. This is the main door to the active vault, one of the 3 vaults that we have. It's all frozen up because inside it's minus 18 Celsius year-round. Everything you're going to need for the world to survive in terms of agriculture is safely kept here for the future. We have 860,000 types of crops.
Journalists call this the Noah's Ark of plant diversity, and personally I think that's quite a good name. We call it the world's most important room. So let's go in. If the humanity can survive, we will need new plant varieties, and the material you need for developing new varieties are genetic diversity. We have seeds from all countries in the world. Kenya, Mexico, India, Peru, Germany, Colombia, Costa Rica, Zambia, Brazil, Australia. Here we have some nice wooden boxes from Tajikistan.
The government said to us. So this to me, that this guy came out in 1994 and said, nope, there is a Project Bluebeam taking place. NASA is involved with the help of the United Nations. I would have thought this man was crazy if I was old enough to consider this. I would have thought he was out of his mind. So what's interesting about this, though, is that he publishes that book in 1994, and then the following years, in 1995 and 1996, he starts saying that he's being hunted by the police and the authorities for his involvement in networks of prohibited information. Now, that also sounds crazy. Oh, they're after me now because I published Project Bluebeam. He sounds like a total nut job. That sounds insane. Except for the fact that the state then took his children in September of 1996, claiming that his children being homeschooled was just a bad thing and that they weren't receiving the education that they deserved. They made his children wards of the state. They took his children so that they would receive a public education. So that's odd. Why would you take children because they're being homeschooled and make them wards of the state so that they can receive a public education? Well, it's going to get a little odder. He then died of a heart attack in his home in December of 1996 at the age of 51, just one day after being arrested and spending a night in jail. So they arrested him, something pertaining to his children not being in school, and then a day later he died. So obviously you can see that a ton of conspiracy theories regarding his death exist. That's weird. It's weird enough for people to then start listening to maybe some things that he was saying. So Serge Manis said that step 1 of Project Bluebeam was going to involve the manufacturing of artificially created earthquakes in strategic locations around the world. Again, to make it clear, he is stating in 1994 that the governments were in possession of technology that was going to be able to make this happen. Can the government cause earthquakes? I don't really know about that. Again, I'm just telling you what he said. These earthquakes, according to him, were going to unearth ancient artifacts, indicating that the religious doctrines of all nations have been misunderstood for centuries, thus discrediting all religions. The second step, he says, was going to involve a giant show from space. Essentially, they were going to use 3-dimensional optical holograms that were going to project holographic images to beam across the sky, and that these images were going to include projections of Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Krishna, and it was all going to merge into one. Essentially, they were going to be able to accomplish this by using space-based satellites, and it was going to make the entire sky transform into a massive movie screen. Do they have the technology to do that at NASA? I don't know. NASA really is just sort of a black budget, in my opinion. I have no idea what NASA does. I don't know why they're getting trillions and trillions of taxpayer dollars. I don't know what NASA does. Call me an idiot, but they have an incredible budget for seemingly nothing, in my opinion. The third step is even more far-fetched. He says that this is going to involve artificial intelligence. Again, I just like to state this over and over again. He was saying this in 1994. Artificial intelligence that was going to be able to use mind control to reach people inside of their minds. And this was going to involve rays from satellites that are being fed memories from our computers that have stored massive data about every single human being on Earth. And finally, the fourth step of Project Bluebeam was going to use various technologies in order to convince people that alien invasions were taking place, alien invasions, and even the rapture itself, thus making it easier for governments and the powers that be to take control of a fear-addled population. The NASA Bluebeam project is the prime directive for the New World Order's absolute control over the populations of the entire Earth.
If you've got a tattoo already on, it's all right, come back. Don't put any more. You've been living in sin, it's all right, come back. Just don't go there anymore. You've been mixing with the wrong people, so-called friends, it's okay, stop, come back. Don't mix anymore. Don't. Whatever you've been doing, stop it. Come back and say, Lord, fix me, Lord, because I can't fix myself. I tried. Every time I tried, I failed even more. This time, I surrender. I'm asking you, Lord, to take over. I'm giving you the freedom, Lord, to take me from head to toe, inside and out. I'm all yours. I give you the permission to do as you wish and as you please and as you will in my life. Do it now, Lord.